The first few days after Lyra came into Jalen's home were full of silence, tension, and confusion. Jalen tried his best to talk to her, but she only glared, turning her head away whenever he spoke. She was small but fierce, like a spark that refused to die even in the coldest wind. He could see the pain and pride in her eyes, but every time he tried to help, she acted like he was her enemy. Jalen wasn't rich or famous. He was just a human mechanic who fixed scrap machines on the outer planet called HFY, a dry, dusty place where everyone was trying to survive. He had no family and very few friends, but he had one rule. He never walked away from someone in trouble. That was why when he saw the alien girl being sold for only 2 credits, he couldn't ignore it. Now, as he looked across his workshop, he saw her sitting on the floor beside an old crate, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She looked lost and angry, as if she hated the world for what it had done to her. Jalen sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm not your enemy," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you." Lyra didn't reply. Her large silver eyes flashed with mistrust. "Fine," Jalen muttered. "You don't want to talk, then don't. But at least eat something." He placed a small bowl of warm soup on the floor near her and went back to his workbench. He didn't look at her again, though he could feel her stare burning into his back. After a few minutes, he heard the faint sound of the spoon tapping the bowl. She had decided to eat. It wasn't much, but to Jalen it was progress. The next day, Jalen found Lyra standing near his old engine parts, touching them with a strange curiosity. He smiled a little. "Careful," he said. "Those are sharp." "I'm not stupid," she said suddenly, her voice quiet but firm. It was the first full sentence she had spoken to him. Jalen was surprised. You speak our language?" "Little," she replied, hesitating over the word. "Learned." From listening, Jalen was impressed. "That's amazing. You're quick." She gave him a look that mixed pride and suspicion. "Don't flatter me," Jalen chuckled. "All right, no flattery. But maybe we can help each other. You can learn more words. I can learn what you know." She tilted her head. "You buy me?" "For that?" Jalen shook his head. "No, I bought you because no one should be sold like that. I just couldn't walk away." Lyra frowned and turned her face away. "You pity me?" Jalen paused. "No, I just don't like seeing people trapped." Lyra didn't answer, but her eyes softened, just a little. Days turned into weeks. Lyra didn't trust Jalen completely, but she began to stay closer instead of hiding in corners. She watched him fix machines, sometimes asking questions in broken English. Jalen would explain slowly, using simple words and gestures. She learned quickly, repeating the names of tools, metals, and wires with near-perfect memory. One morning, Jalen woke up to find his small workshop unusually quiet. He found Lyra crouched beside the generator, her small fingers tightening a screw. "Hey," he said, smiling. "What are you doing?" "Fixing," she said simply. "It make noise before. I make it stop." Jalen checked and found she had done it perfectly. "You did this by yourself?" Lyra nodded. "Watch you learn," he laughed softly. "You're a natural mechanic." She smiled faintly, her first real smile, and then quickly looked away, embarrassed. That moment stayed with Jalen all day. Despite their slow progress, not everyone on HFY approved. People in the market whispered. Some said Jalen was crazy for keeping an alien girl in his house. Others joked that he had bought trouble for only 2 credits. A few even called him a thief, claiming she might belong to some corporation or lab. Jalen ignored the talk, but deep down he was worried. That evening, while cleaning tools, he saw a small light blinking on Lyra's locket, the strange silver pendant she always wore. "Lyra," he said carefully, "that thing, what is it?" Her expression changed instantly. She stepped back, covering the locket with her hand. "No touch," she said sharply. "All right," Jalen said quickly, raising his hands. "I won't, but what does it do?" "It's mine," she said quietly. "From before," Jalen nodded. "Before what?" She turned away. "Before being sold." The words hit him like a punch. He realized she remembered more than she admitted, and whatever memory she had, it hurt her deeply. He didn't push her to explain. Instead, he said, "You can keep it safe. No one will take it here." Lyra glanced at him, her eyes full of something between fear and gratitude. In the following days, they began to talk more. Jalen told her about Earth, about oceans, forests, and blue skies she had never seen. She listened quietly, her eyes distant as if trying to imagine such a place. Humans always fight? She asked one night as they ate dinner. Sometimes, Jalen admitted, but we also help each other when we can. That's what keeps us human. Lyra thought for a while and then said softly, My people used to help too. But they stopped. Why? Because of fear. They feared everything that was not them. Jalen sighed. That sounds familiar. She looked at him surprised. Humans too? He nodded slowly. We're not perfect, but we keep trying to be better. She smiled faintly again. That is good. One morning, a loud knock came at the workshop door. Jalen opened it and found two men wearing gray coats with silver badges. Corporate agents. Are you Jalen Marr? One of them asked. Yes, what's this about? We're conducting an inventory check. There's been a report of stolen property matching a Class B specimen description. Humanoid, silver-eyed. Jalen's chest tightened. I don't have anything like that, he said calmly. The men exchanged looks. We'll need to look around. Without a warrant? Jalen said, forcing a smile. Not going to happen. The taller man frowned but didn't argue. We'll be back, he warned, and they left. Jalen shut the door and turned. Lyra was standing in the shadows, trembling slightly. They know, she whispered. They coming back. Don't worry, he said. They can't take you. Not while I'm here. She stared at him. You protect me? Of course, he said softly. You're not property. Something in her heart shifted then, a fragile trust beginning to grow. Later that night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, looking at the dull stars through the dusty air. She remembered the white rooms, the cold machines, and the scientists who spoke in numbers, not words. She had been part of an experiment, one that went wrong. When she escaped, she was caught and sold as a specimen. She had promised herself never to trust humans again. But Jalen was different. He treated her like a person, not a thing. Quietly, she took a piece of scrap metal from the bench and began shaping it with her small hands. By morning, she placed a tiny metal charm beside Jalen's coffee mug. It looked like a small gear with a symbol etched inside, the same mark that glowed faintly on her locket. What's this? Jalen asked when he saw it. A thank you, she said shyly. You fix machines, I fix heart. Jalen blinked, then smiled warmly. That's the best gift I've ever got. Days passed peacefully after that. Lyra learned faster than anyone Jalen had ever met. She could fix engines, rewire circuits, and even understand the data screens. Sometimes she hummed softly while working, a melody that seemed to calm the machines themselves. But peace on Kes 4 never lasted long. One afternoon, Jalen received a message on his terminal. Property trace confirmed. Specimen retrieval in progress. He froze. His hands trembled as he turned to Lyra. She had seen it too. They found me, she whispered. We'll figure something out, Jalen said quickly. We always do. Lyra took a deep breath, standing straighter. You help me? I help you, Jalen frowned. What do you mean? She placed her hand on the generator panel, and a soft pulse of light spread through the wires. I remember something, she said. A way to stop them. Maybe. Jalen didn't understand how she did it, but he trusted her. She was no longer the scared girl he had bought for 2 credits. She was stronger now. Braver. That night, as the hum of the machines filled the workshop, Jalen realized something important. He hadn't just rescued Lyra. She was rescuing him too. In a world where most people gave up, she reminded him why humans still fought for what was right. And somewhere in that quiet, dusty workshop, 2 unlikely friends, one human, one alien, began preparing for whatever was coming next. The night air on Kes 4 was thick with dust and electricity. In Jalen's workshop, every light was off. Only the faint blue glow from a single monitor lit the room. The screen flashed one repeating message. Retrieval drones incoming, estimated times 02:15. Jalen sat at the bench with his tools spread out like weapons. Lyra stood beside him, quiet but firm. Her silver eyes reflected the screen's glow. They will come fast, she said softly. Machines first, then humans, Jalen nodded. We'll be ready. She tilted her head, curious. You fight for me, even when they call me property? He looked at her seriously. You're not property, Lyra, you're a person. You have a right to live free. Her lips trembled slightly and she looked away. Most humans would not say that. Most humans, Jalen said, tightening a bolt, don't know what being human really means. The first hour passed in silence. Jalen worked fast, wiring together broken coils, salvaged chips, and copper cables. Lyra watched his every move. What are you making? She asked. An EMP trap, he said. It'll shut down their drones for a few seconds. Not much, but maybe enough? Enough for what? For you to run if you need to, Lyra frowned. I do not run, Jalen smiled. Yeah, I figured. Outside, the desert wind began to howl. Lights appeared on the horizon. Cold white lights moving in perfect formation. Drones. They looked like flying spiders, thin and sharp, scanning the ground with pale blue beams. Lyra's heart beat faster. She could feel something strange inside her, a faint hum that matched the drone's signal. They are linked to me, she whispered. They follow my frequency. Jalen turned to her. Then we changed the frequency. How? He pointed to her locket. That thing's been blinking since the day I met you. If we can reverse its signal, maybe we can jam them. Lyra hesitated. If I open it, they will know where I am. They already know, Jalen said. But we'll make sure they regret it. For the first time, she trusted him fully. She unclasped the silver locket and placed it on the table. When it opened, a soft wave of blue light filled the room. Strange symbols floated in the air, spinning slowly. What is this? Jalen asked. Data, she said. Part of me. He stared at her. You mean, this thing has your memory? She nodded. Before I was sold, they used this to control me. To track me, Jalen thought quickly. Then let's change it from a leash to a shield. She looked at him unsure. Can you do that? He grinned. Watch me. They worked side by side, human and alien, the hum of the locket mixing with the clatter of tools. Jalen soldered new wires into the locket's small power core. Lyra whispered a low tune, her people's harmonic language, syncing her voice with the device. Suddenly, the screen blinked again. Warning retrieval team arrival, Daro 3. They're almost here, Jalen said. Lyra, stand back, she shook her head. No, I fight too. The first drone hit the outer fence with a burst of sparks. Then another. Then 10 more. They sliced through the metal like paper and hovered in a ring around the workshop. Their cameras glowed red. Target located, one drone's synthetic voice said. Activate, Jalen whispered, pressing the button on his homemade EMP. A crackling sound filled the air. The lights flickered and the drones began to spark and drop, their rotors screaming as the power surged. 3 fell to the ground. 5 more staggered in the air, but new ones kept coming. Jalen grabbed his plasma torch. We need to move. Lyra's locket glowed brighter. Wait, she said. I can do something. She stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly silver. The hum from her chest grew stronger. The locket floated up in front of her. She began to sing again, a soft, vibrating sound that made the air shimmer. The drones hesitated. Their red lights flickered to blue. They're stopping, Jalen said in disbelief. Lyra's voice trembled. I am rewriting their link, turning their command against them. The drones suddenly turned upward, scanning the sky. They no longer targeted Lyra. They were scanning for something else. Then, in perfect unison, they flew away. Jalen stared. You just made them leave? Lyra collapsed to her knees. For now, but the humans will come next. 2 hours later, the sound of engines echoed from the distance. Jalen and Lyra stood on the roof of the workshop, watching a small corporate ship descend near the market square. They won't stop until they take you, Jalen said quietly. Then they will fail, she said. They went down to the streets together. The people of the market, traders, mechanics, scavengers, had heard what was happening. Many had known Jalen for years. They saw the lights, the drones, the chaos. Now, as the corporate men stepped out of their ship, the crowd formed a wall of silent resistance. The lead officer, tall and pale, held a tablet glowing with blue light. Under Section 19 of the Galactic Trade Code, he said loudly, we are authorized to retrieve a Class B experimental asset. Turn her over. Jalen stood in front of Lyra. She's not an asset. She's a person. The officer frowned. You have no legal claim. Jalen smiled bitterly. And you have no heart. The crowd murmured in agreement. Move aside, the officer ordered. We have permission to use force. Try it, said a deep voice from the crowd. It was Meko, the old chef who ran the noodle stand nearby. He was holding a heavy wrench. Soon others joined him. The mechanic twins, the junk dealer, the courier, even children who'd helped Jalen collect scrap. They didn't have weapons, but they had courage. Lyra looked at them all shocked. They protect me? Jalen nodded. Humans protect what matters. The officer hesitated. He hadn't expected resistance. You are interfering with company property, he warned. Jalen raised his voice. Then your company better prepare to fight everyone on this block. The crowd cheered, the sound echoing across the metal buildings. The officer's face darkened. He raised his hand, signaling the soldiers behind him. Before they could fire, Lyra stepped forward. Her locket began to glow again, brighter than ever. No more, she said firmly. The ground vibrated. A strange pulse spread from the locket, moving through the street like a wave of light. Every electronic device around them, the soldiers' weapons, their helmets, their ship, began to short out. Sparks flew and power systems crashed. What did she do? One soldier shouted. She broke their link, Jalen said proudly. She just turned off their whole system. The officer tried to use his communicator, but it was dead. His face went pale. This isn't over, he said bitterly. You're all breaking the law. Maybe, Jalen said, but we're keeping our humanity. He turned away, and the crowd slowly surrounded the soldiers, pushing them back toward their ship. No one attacked. They simply made it clear that the corporation wasn't welcome here. The officer shouted empty threats until his voice faded into the night. Finally, the ship lifted off, disappearing into the clouds. When it was over, the people of the market cheered. The sound filled the streets like thunder. Jalen turned to Lyra, who was still standing in the middle of the road, her locket dim now but still warm with energy. You did it, he said softly. You saved all of us, Lyra shook her head. We did it, he smiled. Yeah, we did. That night, Jalen's workshop became a place of celebration. People brought food, lights, and laughter. Lyra sat quietly in one corner, watching the humans share stories. She didn't understand all their words, but she understood the feeling: unity, hope, belonging. When Jalen came over, she said softly, You could have sold me back. You did not, he laughed gently. And missed the best mechanic I've ever met? No way. She looked at him with deep eyes. You are. Strange human. Thanks, he said. I'll take that as a compliment. Later that night, when everyone had gone, Lyra stood outside under the pale stars. The desert wind was cool now. She looked up and whispered something in her language. A promise. Jalen joined her quietly. What did you say? I said. I will not run anymore, she replied. This is home now, he smiled. Good, because we're just getting started. Started? Yeah, Jalen said. Those corporate types will come back someday. We'll need to be ready. Lyra nodded. Then we build better machines. Exactly. They looked at the horizon together. One human, one alien united by courage and choice. In a galaxy full of greed and control, a small workshop on HFY had just taught everyone a lesson. You can't buy freedom, and you can't own a heart that chooses to stand. The morning after the retrieval attempt, HFY was quiet but tense. The streets of the market were still dusty, littered with scraps of broken drone parts and smoking electronics. Traders and mechanics moved carefully, whispering about what had happened the night before. Jalen and Lyra stood in the center of his workshop, surveying the small chaos outside. Lyra's locket was quiet now, the soft glow replaced by a steady silver shine. She held it close, thinking about the attack and the courage of the humans who had protected her. They came back, didn't they? She asked softly. Not yet, Jalen replied. But if they do, we'll be ready. We just need to make sure we're stronger than before. Lyra nodded. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging. She was no longer a captive or a possession. She was part of a small, stubborn community that cared for her, human and alien together. Over the next few days, the workshop became a hub of preparation. Jalen and Lyra worked side by side, fixing machines, making new tools, and testing devices that could protect the market from future attacks. Lyra's memory and knowledge became invaluable. She could sense the faint frequencies of drones, predict their movements, and suggest ways to disrupt them before they arrived. Like this, she said one afternoon, pointing to a small coil connected to a blinking console. If you redirect power here, you make barrier stronger. Jalen nodded, impressed. You're thinking faster than any tech manual I've ever read. She shrugged, a small smile tugging at her lips. I had to survive. You learn fast or die, he laughed softly. Glad you're on our side now. The market slowly began to change. Word of the retrieval attempt spread, and many of the people who had witnessed it began to take notice. Traders who once ignored Jalen now came to him for advice. Mechanics offered parts for the protective devices. Even the children who had helped during the attack now joined daily to assist, learning how to make small, clever devices under Lyra's guidance. One evening, Jalen and Lyra stood on a rooftop, watching the sun set over the red dunes. "You know," Lyra said quietly, "humans are strange. You fight for others even if it is dangerous." "Why?" Jalen thought for a moment. "Because someone helped me once, long ago. And because it is right, people should protect each other. Not for money, not for praise, just because it matters." Lyra looked at him. "I understand now. That is why you stayed. Not for me, but for what is right," he smiled. "Exactly." A week later, the corporate office sent another warning. A holographic message broadcast across the market. The officer from before appeared on the screen, his expression cold and angry. "Jalen Marr," he said, "you are harboring a Class B experimental asset. You have violated intergalactic law. Surrender the subject immediately or face consequences." Jalen tapped his wrench on the table, unfazed. "Tell them we're busy right now." "Maybe they can wait," Lyra laughed quietly. "You are very human. Very brave. Or maybe very foolish." "Maybe both," Jalen admitted. "But we're not alone. Look," he pointed to the market streets. Traders, mechanics, and helpers had gathered ready to support him. The officer's message flickered in the heat, but the people's resolve was stronger than any hologram. Lyra realized something important that day. Courage was contagious. Her presence had inspired the humans to fight, but their actions had also inspired her. She no longer felt fear alone. Together they were stronger. She opened her locket carefully. "I want to help more," she said. "Not only for me, but for others who cannot defend themselves." Jalen nodded. "Good. Then let's start by securing the market. Step by step, we make this place safe." They worked late into the night, creating signal disruptors, EMP shields, and safe zones. Lyra taught the children how to use sound and vibration to detect intruders. Jalen showed the traders how to hide important items in clever ways. By dawn, the market had changed. It was no longer just a place to sell and buy. It had become a small fortress of hope. Days passed, and Lyra's confidence grew. She began speaking more, forming sentences that no longer relied on gestures alone. She laughed more, shared stories from her memories, and even taught a few humans her harmonic songs. The melodies could jam signals, confuse sensors, and soothe frightened animals. "Your songs are amazing," Jalen said one morning. "I think they might even work on stubborn machines." Lyra smiled faintly. "Machines are not stubborn. They just follow what they hear." One day, as they worked, a small spacecraft landed on the outskirts of the market. Unlike the corporate ships, this one was sleek, quiet, and marked with symbols from Lyra's home world. A group of aliens emerged, scientists and researchers, not soldiers. Lyra froze. Memories rushed back. White rooms, cold floors, and distant voices. Her first instinct was fear. "Do not trust them," she whispered to Jalen. He nodded. "I know, but let's see what they want." The leader of the group approached. "Lyra," the alien said gently, "we tracked your signal. We were sent to retrieve you. We mean no harm. We only wish to ensure your safety and offer knowledge from your world." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "I am not property. I will not go back to be an experiment." The alien leader nodded. "We understand. That is why we come as friends, not masters. You have a choice." Jalen stood by her side. "She has made a home here. She is free to choose." After a long pause, Lyra stepped forward. "I will speak with you, but only as Lyra, not as your subject." The alien nodded. "As you wish." Over the next week, Lyra shared information about her people's technology and culture. In return, the researchers offered knowledge about star maps, healing techniques, and energy sources that could help Kes4 thrive. The humans listened, fascinated by what Lyra taught, and they incorporated the lessons into their everyday life. The market was no longer just a marketplace. It became a community of humans and aliens working together, sharing knowledge, and protecting each other. Jalen's workshop was the heart of this small revolution. Lyra finally felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. She could laugh, create, teach, and protect, not because someone forced her, but because she chose to. One evening after another long day, Jalen and Lyra stood on the edge of the market, watching the sun set behind the dunes. "You've changed everything here," Jalen said. The market, the people, even me. Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "And you've changed me," she said softly. "I was afraid. Now I know courage is not just in fighting. It is in choosing to stand even when afraid." Jalen smiled. "You taught me that too. That's why I wanted to save you. Not because you were helpless, but because I knew we could be stronger together." She reached out, brushing a strand of dust-colored hair from his face. "Together," she said. Months later, the market had fully transformed. The traders worked with confidence, the children played safely, and machines hummed efficiently under Lyra's guidance. Jalen had repaired nearly every broken device in the area. Lyra's locket glowed faintly each day, a reminder of her past but also a symbol of her freedom. Corporate threats still lingered, but the market was prepared. Anyone who tried to impose control would find resistance, unity, and ingenuity. Humans and aliens worked side by side, proving that kindness, courage, and collaboration could defeat fear and greed. Lyra finally understood the truth Jalen had tried to teach her from the beginning. Freedom was not something you bought or sold. It was something you fought for together. And in the dusty streets of Kes-4, a human and an alien girl had shown the galaxy that even small acts of courage could change the future. Jalen looked at Lyra. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" She smiled, her eyes shining. "2 credits for freedom," she said, laughing softly. "Who would believe it?" Jalen laughed too. "Some things are priceless, Lyra. Some things can't be bought at all." And as the twin suns set over the horizon, humans and aliens alike knew one thing for certain. When courage, kindness, and choice unite, nothing can break them. The twin suns of Kes-4 burned like orange eyes above the dusty market. Heat shimmered off metal roofs, and the air smelled of oil, rust, and strange alien spices. Traders shouted in different languages, their voices mixing with the hum of small engines and the hiss of power cells being tested. It was a day like any other in the Outer Rim Trade Bazaar, where anything could be bought or sold, from robot parts to entire mining drones. But today, something different caught people's attention. A small crowd had gathered near the auction stand. A merchant in a red robe stood proudly behind his table. A holographic sign floated above him. "Special item, captured alien female, only 2 credits." Whispers spread through the market. A living being for only 2 credits? That was less than the cost of a broken tool. Most thought it was a trick, some cruel joke to attract buyers, but curiosity pulled people closer. Behind the merchant, standing in a small cage made of glowing blue energy, was a young alien girl. Her skin shimmered faintly like moonlight on water. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders, and her eyes, bright and sharp like stars, scanned the crowd without fear. She didn't speak, didn't beg, and didn't cry. She only stared at those who stared at her. The merchant grinned. "She's real. Found her wandering near the crashed ships in the North Desert. Doesn't speak our language, but strong, healthy, and obedient. 2 credits, final offer." The crowd murmured again. Some laughed, some turned away. Nobody wanted trouble from the Interplanetary Authority. Trading sentient life was a gray area in the law. Then a man stepped forward. His name was Jalen Marr, a mechanic and scavenger who lived in the lower levels of the bazaar. He wasn't rich, and in fact 2 credits was nearly all he had. His jumpsuit was stained with oil, and his boots were cracked with dust. But he wasn't the type to walk away when something felt wrong. He stared at the girl in the cage. Something about her expression, calm but proud, made him hesitate. She looked too intelligent, too aware to be someone's item. He asked, "What's her name?" The merchant shrugged. "Doesn't talk much. Keeps saying something like Lyra or Lyra. Maybe that's it." Jalen frowned. "You said she's obedient." "How do you know?" "Because she hasn't fought back," the merchant said quickly. "And I have this." He held up a small metallic bracelet with blinking red lights. Control band. Keeps her from running away. Works fine. Jalen looked again at the girl, Lyra. She was thin, tired, but her eyes were full of quiet strength. He could tell she wasn't obedient because of fear. She was waiting. The merchant leaned closer. 2 credits, my friend. Come on, that's cheaper than a cleaning drone. People laughed, shaking their heads. A human buying an alien girl? You'll regret it, someone shouted. But Jalen didn't listen. He tossed 2 small coins onto the table. I'll take her. The merchant blinked in surprise. You're serious? Yeah, Jalen said. Release her. The merchant shrugged and pressed a button. The blue cage flickered and vanished. The girl stepped forward slowly, her movements graceful but cautious. The control band on her wrist blinked once more before the merchant handed Jalen a small remote. Press this if she gives you trouble, the merchant said, grinning. Jalen ignored him, pocketed the remote, and turned to Lyra. Come on, he said softly. You're free now. She tilted her head, not understanding his words but recognizing the kindness in his tone. They walked through the busy market together. People whispered as they passed. Some laughed, some stared, but Jalen didn't care. He brought her to his small workshop at the edge of the bazaar, a cluttered metal building filled with tools, wires, and half-finished machines. Home sweet home, Jalen said, setting down his gear. It's not much, but it's safe. Lyra looked around curiously. Her fingers brushed over a broken drone, then a glowing energy coil. She pointed at one of the devices. Power, core? She said slowly. Jalen froze. You speak English? She shook her head, trying to form words. Not much, learn, he smiled. You're doing great already. She blinked as if surprised by his kindness. Then she touched the metal band on her wrist and frowned. Remove? Jalen looked at it. The small device hummed faintly. Yeah, I'll try. He took a tool from his workbench and began working carefully. Sparks flew as he pried open the control band. After a few minutes, it clicked open and fell to the floor. Lyra gasped softly and looked at her free wrist. Her silver eyes glowed for a moment, faint energy rippling through her skin. Better? Jalen asked. She nodded. Better. For the first time in weeks, Lyra could breathe freely. She sat near the corner, watching Jalen as he fixed an old power cell. The light from the lamps reflected on her skin, and she seemed almost otherworldly. Jalen asked, Where are you from? She hesitated. Not here. Far Skyworld. She pointed upward. Crash, ship gone. People gone, Jalen understood. Your ship crashed in the desert? She nodded slowly, sadness flickering in her eyes. Fire, no more home. Jalen felt a pang of sympathy. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Lyra tilted her head again. Sorry? It means... I wish that didn't happen to you, she smiled faintly. You kind, others. Not, Jalen sighed. People fear what they don't understand. She looked around the small workshop again. You not fear? He shook his head. No, I think you've been through enough already. For a long time they sat in silence, only the hum of machines filling the air. Outside, the market continued its noisy rhythm, but in that small workshop, two strangers began to understand each other. That night, Lyra slept in a corner under a blanket. Jalen stayed up repairing one of his flying drones, glancing at her now and then. He could tell she was intelligent, far more than most gave her credit for. As he worked, he heard a soft humming sound. Lyra was awake, singing quietly, not with words, but with pure tones like soft music carried on light. The air around her shimmered faintly. The machines in the room responded, lights flickering in rhythm with her voice. Jalen froze, amazed. That's incredible. Lyra stopped and looked at him shyly. Song, she said. For calm, he smiled. It's beautiful. You can do that with your voice? She nodded. Energy, sound and life, same thing. Jalen leaned back in his chair. You're not like any alien I've seen. Lyra looked thoughtful. Many worlds, many kinds. Some want control. Some want peace. Which one are you? He asked. She hesitated, then said softly, Peace. The next morning, Jalen went to the market for supplies. When he returned, he found Lyra sitting by the door tinkering with one of his broken drones. Hey, he said, surprised. You're fixing that? She nodded. See? She pressed a small crystal she'd found into the circuit. The drone buzzed to life, hovering weakly in the air. Jalen laughed. You just saved me 2 hours of work. Lyra smiled, a real warm smile this time. Learn from you. You fix. I fix too. Yeah, Jalen said. I think we'll make a good team. But peace never lasted long on Kes 4. Later that evening, 2 men in black uniforms appeared outside Jalen's workshop. They carried official badges and cold expressions. Mechanic Jalen Marr, one of them said. That's me, Jalen replied cautiously. You purchased an unregistered alien life form yesterday. She's not property, Jalen said firmly. She's free now. The officer's eyes narrowed. Not according to law. That being is classified as unknown technology. All unknowns must be reported and contained. Jalen stepped forward. She's not a machine or a weapon. She's a person. The officer ignored him and tried to enter the workshop, but Lyra appeared in the doorway. Her silver eyes glowed faintly. The officers hesitated, their scanners flickering with static. "Leave," Lyra said firmly. Her voice, though calm, carried strange power. The officers looked uneasy. What did she just—" Before they could finish, their devices sparked and went dark. The lights in the street flickered. Lyra's energy song echoed softly, invisible waves of force pushing the men backward. They stumbled, terrified, and retreated into the crowd. Jalen stared at her in shock. "You saved me." Lyra looked down, her voice quiet. "They hurt before. I not want hurt again." Jalen nodded slowly. "I understand." He knew then that she wasn't just some lost alien. She was something powerful, and someone the authorities would never stop chasing. As the sun set, Jalen sat by his workshop window thinking. Lyra sat beside him, her eyes calm but distant. He finally said, "Lyra, you can stay here as long as you want. You're safe with me." She turned toward him and nodded. Safe. Together. Outside, the night wind blew through the metal streets of Kes 4. Inside, in a small workshop filled with broken machines, a human and an alien girl began something that would soon change both their worlds.